of. And I know that during the Second World War, we used to get a lot of Brazilian quartz for two-way radios and things like that. So two-way radios can send and receive and things like that. Now, and I also know that whenever I was a kid, you could still buy crystal radio sets. I think you still can if you go on Amazon and buy them. And basically, what it is it's a crystal, and you wind it with copper, and then you then you go across it to try to pick up different radio stations, and it does work. Is that something that now from my tradition, which is growing up in Ireland and everything like that, copper was a very, very sacred material, and I could understand that if that was a raw quartz and that type of things like that maybe that would enhance it. Is that something that you would feel that they would tell you, hey, I want this, or would you find that to be sort of rudeness to try to enhance it, or do you try to measure the resonant frequency of your skulls or anything like that?
Right. Well, I'm not really scientist orientated because I have a communication with my skulls and I can feel their energy.
Right.
So I don't really need to do like a measurement to prove to myself something's happening. Now, what I think happens to them is as we have our collective experiences, whether it's something going on locally or we're traveling or we're taking them somewhere or whatever it is, or they're meeting new skulls or new people, I feel like they're constantly being not enhanced but awakened more to their full capability, through this contact and through the experience of different frequencies of energy. But this living consciousness inside is choosing, like how it's going to function and operate. We're not really telling them. We're just honoring each skull as they give us their name and as we gain understanding about the way in which that particular crystal skull wishes to work with the frequencies of energies that are natural to it and that it's broadcasting to assist other people it has contact with. So we're really not involved in the decision-making or whatever. Now, if the skull says, hey, I want to go to this place, and it's possible we can do it and they're not too demanding. I've heard some skulls can be quite demanding sometimes. It's almost like dealing with a live person in many ways, which sounds kind of crazy for some, but this is the way that people are describing it to us and the experiences we're having. So I think it's pretty much they're in charge of their own evolution, and they let their human guardians know when they need to go to a certain place in order to be able to enhance whatever their gift is or the frequencies of energy they're channeling.
Mm-hmm. So is that now? You said before, and I think it's a perfect time that you were in search of a blue skull in Peru. Was that something that you were told by one of your other skulls that you needed to go there, and did they all go with you? Did you take them all with you, or is that something that or is that sort of? Well, just tell me the story about how you ended up in Peru, I guess. I mean, that's kind of an interesting story.
Well, for Peru, it was more when I first went, which I think was in 1989 was the first time I went. It was more that, I'm an Aries and I like adventure, and I was very drawn to Peru. I was very curious about it. And the only way that you can understand what a place is, you got to go there, you got to experience it. So apparently part of my life is about having the experience. When I have the experience, then I can discuss it, I can share it, I can write about it, I can explain it, more than just philosophize about it. Mm-hmm. So what happened was I met a person when I was living in San Francisco who owned a tour agency, a spiritual tour agency. And we became friends, and he said, yeah, if you want to go to Peru, I have guides that can help you, and we'll set the whole thing up. So I did the traditional tourist trip first. I flew into Lima, And then I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago, but I know I went to Machu Picchu. I went to Cusco. I went to Lake Titicaca, and I went to Nazca. I think those were the main places, and a couple of things around Lima. And the thing about Peru is it has a lot of ancient stone structures. And some of these stone structures are comprised of gigantic stones which are placed together that have no space between them whatsoever.
Right.
So archaeologists will say, oh, yeah, the Inca, which were only around for about 100 years, like 1450 to about 1560 or 70, whatever. They built all this, and that's crazy. They didn't build all of it. There's some of it they may have built, which is a more primitive stone structure, but not these gigantic temples made out of stone that weighs tons and tons of rock and has high doorways. And another building in Cusco I think has 12 angles. One stone has 12 angles on it. I mean, this is superior stonework, and I think that these structures may be proof of that Peru and part of South America was part of the large continent known as Lemuria, which was in the Pacific Ocean, which maybe Hawaii was a part of as well, and Easter Islands. They could all be connected to this because they all have, powerful energies and strange stone structures around them. So I was just drawn to go to have my first experience. And the one thing I will warn your listeners, if you've never been to Peru, is you get into high elevation and into physical conditions that are taxing. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you're going to go for 10 days or 2 weeks, you need to be prepared that you're going to have to do a lot of walking or climbing, tax yourself. So you should probably do some exercise or get yourself in shape. Now at 63 years old, turning that this April, I feel like I may need to go back at some point in the future, but whether I could do it physically or not, that's going to be a big question. So we'll just have to see. But that's kind of the essence. And, of course, Peru has tons of UFO sightings. The local people there, they don't treat UFOs like here and say, that guy who saw a UFO, he's insane and he's crazy. No, they go, oh, gosh, I missed it. That sounds fantastic. I should have seen that. So it's a totally different environment there. And basically, most of the country is very primitive. Mm-hmm. It's like they got a few cities now that are quite modern, that have nice hotels and everything, because tourism is very important to Peru. It brings in a lot of the money to the country that they need because they're a very poor country. But once you leave like Lima and you start going into by these stone ruins you want to see and everything is much more primitive. Yeah. Like you need to bring your own toilet paper, really, to be prepared for this. So it's kind of like, going out camping or whatever. But the amazing thing about Peru is that there are certain places that have these stone structures that are remarkable. I mean, like the lines of Nazca, everybody knows about the lines of Nazca, that you can only see these patterns. There's a monkey there, there's a spider there, there's kind of a condor there, these different birds and things. And then there's even on the side of the mountain by there's like a UFO-looking guy waving. But these are very clear images that if you fly, a small plane over it, you can see it, and I've done that, and I have seen these images. But it's like, you could only make this from the sky, but we didn't have airplanes until the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So how could how could the lines stay in the ground without eroding?
Right.
So, I mean, it's like really magical places. The same in Machu Picchu. You have primitive stone structures, you have advanced stone structures there, and then you have all the rumors about possibly a UFO base in Machu Picchu, which is the big mountain that's behind the city, right, which it's named after. And there are groups that figure out a way to go around the rules. You're not supposed to go there at nighttime. They do ceremony in the nighttime, and they have a lot of strange things that happen to them. So really, Peru is a magical place. it's an opportunity for someone to have their own personal paranormal or spiritual experiences. Or the other possibility is, because the energies are so high, they can also go through a personal transformation where they get really emotional. They literally scream out or yell out, let's say, blockages inside of themselves, negativity, and it's kind of like cleansing. And then, of course, there's local shamans there. There's native Indian culture, the Inca history. There's pre-Inca history there. So it's a very amazing place to go visit. So anyway, coming back. So what does a blue crystal skull, or any crystal skull for that matter, have a connection with Peru? Well, what happened to me is there was an ex-wife I had who led a tour to Peru. So it was 1 American and 50 Brazilians, and she was Brazilian. And I remember when we were in the hotel eating breakfast in Cusco, we were getting ready to go to Machu Picchu. She hired this archaeologist to be our guide. And I do not believe for 1 minute that the archaeologist really fully understood what Machu Picchu was about. Like, when he tries to tell you, well, this section was used for this and that section was used for that. When I was there in the energy of these places, it just didn't feel right to me. It's like they don't really know. They're guessing based upon the artifacts that they find. But anyway, while we're eating breakfast, I'm minding my own business, and this archaeologist knows I'm involved with crystal skulls, just gets up out of the clear blue, points at me, says in Spanish, "Joshua knows where there's a crystal skull in Peru." And I was like totally in shock. What is this man talking about? I mean, I would like there to be a crystal skull in Peru, but I had not specifically heard any rumors or anything to that effect, at least at this point in time. Mm-hmm. But then I kind of got a vision, and this is unusual for me because I don't get a lot of visions. That's my gift. I mean, there's certain people that can see spirits. When they get a vision, they see it in total detail and color. And for me, everything is like it's in my mind's eye, but it's in gray, and I can't see it really clearly, but I get a sensing of what it is I'm looking at. And I will preference this, though, because there were 2 occasions when we lived in the Seattle area where I don't know if it was my third eye popping open, but normally when I close my eyes, things are dark, and that's great for me because then, it's dark, I'll just go to sleep, fall asleep. It's great. But on these 2 occasions while I was in Washington, I start seeing images when my eyes were closed. And it was like people walking by and scenes. And the last time this happened, there was some kind of solar storm going on, which may have affected me. I was seeing pastoral patterns like flowers. My eyes closed, and there's this pattern. I couldn't see the whole pattern. It was like part of it. So, but generally, I do not see visions. I do not have a lot of dreams. But in this case, when I was in Peru and this gentleman pointed at me and said, I knew where there was a skull, I got a vision. And the vision was the following. Now, where this comes from, I'm not totally sure, but I had to check it out. So the vision was I felt my body pulled to the northern part of Peru, which is usually where people don't go. The northern part of Peru are pre-Inca cultures, and although there is tourism there and people are interested in that, it's not as popular as the other places that supposedly are linked to the Inca.
Yeah.
So I'm being pulled to the northern part of Peru, which I know nothing about. And then I see a vision of a jungle area with a single line procession of what look like native people. The head of the line is a shaman or an elder, and he's holding out from the body of his hand an object, which I assumed was a crystal skull. So I laughed to myself because ever since I'm young, my most favorite color in the world is sky blue. So I said, well, if there's a crystal skull in Peru, I know it's probably sky blue. So that was the end of it at that point. But this idea of a blue crystal skull in Peru continued to haunt me. And eventually what started to happen was, in my mind's eye, in front of me, off to my left side, like above my head at a 45-degree angle, I start seeing this blue skull appearing to me.